up, everyone? I am actually playing a little hooky from work today, and I'm out for a drive in Penelope. It has been exciting. For the whole last week, I have actually been able to drive Penelope back and forth to work, all over the place. We've got 250 miles on her at this point. But I tell you what, there was a whole lot of almost giving up. 4 months and months and months, Travis and I have been doing everything you can think of to try and make Penelope run and drive correctly. I can't even explain how broken I felt every time I went over to Trav's house to work on the car. We would work 2 or 3 hours and there would be no change. And the car idled beautiful. It revved beautiful. It did not have a cough, a sneeze, a hiccup, anything. It just idled, revved. You would get in the car, take off up the road, it'd rev up, whoop, and then just immediately fall on its face. The only way I can describe it is it almost felt like you started to give it gas and were taking off and somebody closed the chokes on the carburetors. Now mind you, I actually thought that could have been happening at one point. You know, we would go over, we'd go for a drive, see how it felt, try driving it with the air cleaner off, see if that made a difference. Try wiring the chokes open, see if that made a difference. We were changing plugs and wires and, you know, swapping one wire around to see if we had an issue there. We had multiple different distributors. If you remember, at one point we found the vacuum advance distributor was going to full advance at idle, so we threw in a 009. The most frustrating part of everything was we threw in the 009 and go for a drive and go, all right, I think we got it. That was it. It feels better. We got it. The next time you'd go for a drive, boop, 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 just all over the place. Felt horrible. Could not figure it out. Put in a different distributor. I actually got one of the Pertronics 6-volt electronic distributor. Put in a different coil. Same thing. You know, I talked to a buddy. He's like, man, it sounds like fuel starvation. Check your fuel pump. Check your this. Da da da. Which I remember the engine builder telling me he replaced the fuel pump. So I was like, well, maybe it's got the wrong fuel pump. Buy a new fuel pump rod. Buy a new fuel pump. Still the same issue. I mean, we're going through the motions of everything you can think of. Then I find that one of the carburetors isn't pumping off the accelerator pump. You're getting no squirt. So I'm like, that's gotta be it. We pull the carburetor back out, take it all apart, figure out what's going on. In the 32 PDSIT carbs, there's a little tube that goes from the main body to the carburetor top. And that's what transfers the squirt from the accelerator pump. And if that tube is clocked wrong in the body, it plugs the hole, no squirt. Fix it. Yeah, we got it. Go for a drive. Falls on its face. Just, I mean, we're going back to, all right, well, it ran best right before we messed around with the starter. Did we do something electrical there? Let's check all that out. We're redoing the grounds. We put in a 6-volt Optima batteries. For some reason, I can't imagine at this point, we're thinking of all the things that there's no way make the problem, but that's what we're thinking of. So we're putting the old battery back in. We're double checking wiring, you know, and then it got really weird, guys. It ran really good. It drove really good. And then I would go back to the house and pick up Trav to go for a ride. You'd go for a burn up the road, and it would run worse than it ever had. It was insane. And then you'd let the car sit for 5-10 minutes. Get in it and go up the road, boom, boom, and you could do a full perfect burn up the road, no issues. You'd make a turn, and it would start to fall on its face again. It was insane. To the point, like, I typed out this long, crazy email to Gary over at VW Jawbreaker. If you're not following his channel, you should. He's got some cool projects he's working on right now. And he was like, here's my number, call me. And we talked for like an hour on the phone, back and forth. And he was like, man, he's like, you went from a 1600 single port, you're now a 1776 single port. It's got a little bit bigger cam, it's got da-da-da-da-da. It's like, you need to change the main jets and the carburetors. Go bigger. That's what it sounds like to me. All right, we take the carbs back off, we swap the main jets, go bigger. No effect on the car whatsoever. It does absolutely nothing. And I'm just gutted. I talked to my Uncle Gene, Volkswagen tech for a million years, worked on them forever. He's like, I've never heard of that at all. I've never had one do that. I've never, I send him the video of it idling and revving. He's like, it sounds great. Nobody has a clue. We talked to one of our buddies, Trail, here. He was like, oh, it's still 6-volt? It's like 6-volt cars. I love them, but they're weird. It's like, double check all your grounds. Check. We did it. He's like, fresh rebuild engine, da-da-da-da. Yep. Did somebody paint or powder coat the distributor hold down? I don't know. Go out and check. Sure enough, it's painted. All right, well, maybe it's not grounding the distributor properly. Take it, freaking grind it all down, clean it all up, do whatever, boom, pop it in. No change. And we're back to where it does a good burn up the road and then falls on its face. I'm like, well, something's getting hot, maybe. Maybe something's getting hot, right? So, swap distributors again, swap coils again, we're one at a time going through the steps that anyone would go through. No change. And then out of the corner of my eye, I think I see some movement on the carburetor, but it's not on the carburetor to manifold, it's on the manifold to the head. So I wrench that down a little bit, go for a drive, no change. And I'm like, it's crazy because it doesn't seem like there's a vacuum leak. That doesn't feel like the issue. Go back, really wrench those nuts down on both manifolds, and I feel them tighten. Now, the single ports have like a big weird crush washer. My only thought at this point is that did not get crushed. It did not get crushed. And it was tight enough that the vacuum leaks, the sucking extra air, the whatever was only happening sometimes. I mean, it was crazy. So we get those tightened down and bam, the car runs better than it ever has. So one, I guess start with making sure everything's tight. Me, the engine went to the engine builder, got rebuilt, had to go back again to get resealed because there was some leaks, and I assumed it was tight. Maybe he thought they were tight but didn't get that gasket crushed. But then we go drive it, and it drives good. I'm excited. Travis gets in the car, go for a ride. I'm like, yeah, it's great. Pull up to a stop sign. Car won't idle now. It doesn't idle anymore. So we get back to the house, and I start looking at everything, and something must have been slightly holding open in the carbs at one point. So I had the carbs set to where everything was, and something kicked loose. And now it wasn't idling because all my adjustments were made to where the carburetors were, not where they are now. So redo all the adjustments on the carbs, redo everything, and it runs like a champ. Honestly, right now it's probably idling a little too high, but I'm afraid to touch anything because it freaking runs perfect. Also, I put the old points and condenser distributor back in instead of the nice expensive Pertronix electronic distributor back in, because at all of these incidents where something would go wrong, we would take a step back and revert back to what we had just replaced. So we put the other distributor back in. Now, I'm happy because listen to how, it's not a hot rod, but listen to just how quiet and smooth and nice the car runs. Sorry there's wind noise, but I think I could go back in at this point and put the electronic points distributor back in and set everything, and we would be okay. And I can make some adjustments to the carburetors. One other thing that happened on the carburetors was the idle jets themselves started to back out. That didn't help our idle at all. Plus, could have caused some fuel leaks, which could have been catastrophic at some point. So if I'm honest, I'm super excited. The 1770 singleport runs great, revs great, drives great. It's not a hot rod. If I'm totally honest, with everything we've been through, I wish I would have converted the car to 12 volt, built a bigger dual port motor with bigger carburetors, and gone performance with it. I was so about trying to keep everything as stock as possible on the car that I think it added to the problems we encountered. But now that it's running, I'm super happy. So hopefully I can just keep on driving it for a while. I just wanted to give you guys an update on Penelope, on the craziness that we've been through. The fact that, yes, we've still been working on cars, but it would have been like 20 hours of us just doing the same thing over and over again and screaming out in frustration. We do have some exciting stuff coming up. Travis has an engine that's being built for Speedy right now, which is cool. The engine out of Speedy actually goes to one of my car's Bugley, so Bugley might get back on the road at some point. And I've got some parts collected for Pop's 56, so we have some stuff to do. We have some cars that are running. I'm hoping that we'll get some more car shows and some more drives. Thanks for sticking with me. That's going to be it for this Mileage Unknown. Stay tuned for more car shenanigans.